Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. With no intent to bash or disrespect my brother and his personality, he is one of the weakest ones I've ever come across. If it's because he has an authority figure problem, or if he is genuinely incapable of handling anything that requires more responsibility or attention than that of a toddler, he's always been the worst at decision making or responsibility handling, or anything remotely close to what an adult is usually considered an adult for doing. He's a guy that's very quickly influenceable, whose parents always feared he'd enroll into a drug cartel because he couldn't say no to someone or get HIV because his friend offered heroin. And he didn't have the guts to turn it down. In few and simple words, he's a man-child. That being said and out of the way, his girlfriend is the very opposite of what he is, and somewhat considered that in the worst way possible as well. She is loud and outspoken and never shies away from expressing her opinions and demands. She has the ability to captivate everybody's attention and be the center of every conversation. Yet, should you assume that it's because of her words of wisdom or impressive ability to entertain the minds of intellectuals, then you couldn't be more wrong. In some mildly impressive way, she's constantly saying the most wrong and worst things in the worst of situations. Say someone's parents have just passed away. Instead of being there to offer emotional support or her condolences, this woman would challenge herself into a competitive battle to prove that she has it worse, about how her parents aren't dead, but might as well should be, or her grandparents died in some elaborate story in which she was probably in the war, or some outrageous, obviously fake traumatizing life event. The reason I start with this analysis is probably due to the fact that I work at an employment company in which I spend most of my time analyzing people and figuring out the range of their competency and if they're mildly decent human beings. Not sure if my job allows me this ability or if my ability to see through people's bullcrap and see their real nature is what landed me the job. Whichever one came first, it definitely made me dislike my brother's relationship with his newly found love from the very first time I saw them interacting with one another. It felt intoxicating to watch someone who's controlling and manipulative get into a relationship with someone who hasn't any opinions and is prone to being talked into terroristic activities. Watching that was so extremely uncomfortable that it was almost entertaining to poke fun at my brother's girlfriend and annoy her with snickery comments or creating benign inconveniences. If I knew that it would lead to this situation I'm in right now, I really wouldn't have let our interactions get past a simple hello and a passive goodbye. My joking and teasing all the time, either with her, about her, or with other people next to her, probably made her want nothing more than to prove herself and everybody around her that she's a better, more capable, and all-around superior person compared to me. I only realized how deeply my jokes had struck her when I noticed that my brother and his girlfriend's relationship was becoming a copy-paste version of mine. The best example I could give is probably how my brother and his girlfriend announced their engagement a couple of weeks after my boyfriend proposed to me, even though their relationship had barely been going on for a year, contrary to mine, which has been going on for 6 on top of having known my boyfriend since middle school. When my brother proposed to his girlfriend, he didn't even have a ring, and they had to wait for the following Christmas vacation when we visited our grandparents in Italy. He had to ask my grandmother for one so he could give it to his fiancée. My brother's girlfriend tried brushing it off by saying they wanted to ask my grandmother for her room to make it special. It did nothing but prove that it wasn't planned, and it was clearly a last-minute thing that only took place because my boyfriend had decided to ask me for my hand in marriage, instead of them making the decision out of thinking it was the right time or that they were the right people for one another. About 3 months before my wedding was due, my boss specifically requested that I work on a new project. He requested that I work on hiring criteria of people with whom I was familiar, and one of the people I hired many times before and knew exactly how to handle. I would have probably considered this to be the best moment of my professional career and the highlight of my life had it not been snowballed into the demise of my soon-to-be marriage and the fallout of my relationship with my brother. The only problem with the project was that the only other person working on it with me would be my ex-boyfriend, who was the only person I've known for as long as I've known my fiancé. My fiancé and I had a massive argument about whether I would like to take the project or not, and he made it very clear that he was entirely opposed to me working with my ex, having to run around the company and possibly the country all day long with him. I told my fiance I would talk to my boss about things and see what I can do with it, and dropped the conversation without continuing it and simply ignoring the topic every time he brought it up. That this was because I was mad at him and had actually wasted away the opportunity to work on this new project, and I let him assume that because I knew it was only temporary and it was neither worth ruining my relationship nor losing a job opportunity I would probably never have if I turned this one down. Barely a week into lavishing into my newly found career making projects that my brother came into my office, asking me to help him build a CV because he was finally looking for jobs under the excuse that he wanted to be a family guy and a man his wife could rely on or whatever. I couldn't bother trying to understand what was going on, but I invited him into the company so I could help him out, to avoid going to his house or having him at mine. Unfortunately enough, the ex-colleague who was supposed to be absent that day showed up and barged into my office to ask me something urgent that I can't even remember because of how taken aback I was. I knew at that moment that this was what would make things spiral into crap. My brother noticed the change in my expression and possibly figured out that working with my ex was something my husband didn't approve of, so he asked me if Chris was okay with it. I told him he wasn't supposed to know I'm still working with him and begged him to keep it a secret and not tell his wife or my husband, and told him that he should consider it payback for the favor I was doing him. About a month and a half later, I walked into my home and realized that my husband was infuriated with me to the point where he couldn't even return my hello or look in my direction. The first thing he said to me that day was, "Having fun doing the only thing I specifically asked you not to do in our relationship?" As you can probably guess, this led to one of the worst arguments we've had since we met, and that's saying a lot, since we've known each other for over 13 years. Just one single event and argument, which magically took place a couple of weeks before our wedding, made my husband come to the decision that it's probably best if we postpone it and figure things out, or even if we still want to get married to each other before announcing it in front of our families and in the house of God. I had to send out email letters to the entire invite list informing them that the wedding had been postponed, and suffering through the trauma of sitting down to write that email while crying, unable to think of an excuse or a valid reason to share with people or explain the sudden change. I got a response email from my brother's fiance asking me if we had paid off the wedding expenses and if the cancellation fee would be far too great for our own good. The moment I landed my eyes on her email, I realized just how fundamentally messed up her intentions behind it were. And then quickly after that, I realized that all of this was probably their doing. They sat on the luscious piece of information that my brother had promised to keep to himself until the wedding was near so they could cash in on it, seeing that they couldn't afford to pay for anything, and that he literally had to come to me to have a presentable CV. He probably gave her the information because he's such a wuss that he couldn't even keep the secret. She took it and ran with it, plotting something targeted towards damaging me. It was the ultimate revenge for all of the teasing and just happened to be the possible solution they had been looking for. I'm not sure if this is karma playing its cards or if I should pull myself together and do something in return, whatever it may be. I will never ever forgive neither my brother nor his girlfriend or wife or whatever she may be. Update. After a lot of pondering from the last post I wrote, I think I did just the right thing to create a snowball effect in my brother and his fiance's life too. I think it's somewhat brilliant actually. I didn't sneak around, nor did I stab anyone or use anyone's secret to put an end to my bro's fiance's malicious intentions. All I had to do was use my brother's weakness to strike back at her. I called my parents and told them about what actually happened and what made me and Chris change the wedding dates, and then told them why that happened. First thing they did was contact the fiance's parents and told them everything while I was listening. Nobody over-exaggerated anything. The truth itself was enough for all four parents to want to intervene in this marriage. My brother absolutely crapped himself when my parents called him and told him they needed to talk to him about the fact that he ruined his sister's marriage. He was so flustered that when he got to the house and found his in-laws, he nearly fainted. Again, not sure if this makes me a horrific person to use his weakness against him, but all the scolding and shouting and disappointed looks everyone gave him immediately made him fold on the marriage and tell us we're wrong in thinking they did all of this to have the wedding ceremony. If I had to guess from the fiance's expression, she's probably never going to let him forget this for as long as they live. That is assuming they stay together that long anyways. Next story. Background. So when I was 18, I decided that I had had enough of dealing with my parents' issues and decided to go low contact with them and the others in my family. They had my information and vice versa, but I rarely initiated, and as a result, I hadn't spoken with them in 5 years. They were in their 50s, and I recently learned that my mother and father had ended up having another child not long after I left. Cut to 2010, and I get the word that my mother has passed away and my dad wanted to speak to me. He said that he was worried about his own health and that he wanted my sister Allison to come live with me if that should come to pass. At the time, she was 8 years old, and we have no relatives she can go to, so it's between me or the foster care system. I agree since I live alone but don't have much income to support another person. In 2017, my father passed as well, and she came to live with me at 16. In my father's will, I made the owner of their house and named Allison's guardian. Here's the a-hole part. In order to provide for her without putting us both in poverty, I decided to rent the house and eventually sell it to a couple for a good chunk of change. Allison was told by my father that the house would go to her one day, and when she learned that I had sold the house, she was furious. She started screaming and crying that I had taken the only thing she had left from her. I don't think I'm the a-hole because if we didn't, we would have been in poverty. Info from a lower comment. The will states that if the house hasn't been sold by the time she's 18, it will be her legal property. If the house has been sold, it needs to be sold for a certain amount and have the majority of the proceeds go to her. The amount I was offered was significantly more than what the will wanted. Some edits based on repeated questions. The events of this post are in the past. The house was sold in 2018 when Allison was 17. The house was rented, as doing so has more money than my current rent, and it was still under mortgage. Selling was my last option as we were on the cusp of poverty, homelessness, and starvation. I had told Allison I may have to sell the house to the renters a few months before the sale and again, right after it was finalized. She was opposed throughout. I was not given much monetary value in the will, less than 1K in items, and did not have an adequate way to provide for two. I did not ask Allison to contribute since my parents had taken money from me before, which is why I went low contact. Not the a-hole. You made a sacrifice. I understand your sister's perspective. Your parents left a home for you two under the impression that one day you will raise your children in the home you were raised in. Admirable goal and understandable keepsake. The alternative would be an unpredictable foster system that may have induced much more trauma than she would have expected elsewhere. A sacrifice was made for the betterment of both of your livelihoods. You took in your sister, albeit your sister, but you owe her no guardianship. You took her in and vowed to take care of her. When you're an adult, you come across decisions that need to be made that are difficult. One day she will understand this. Not now, but one day. I think you made the right decision, and I'm sorry for your losses. Remember that this is your sister, and please do not bear any grudge towards her for her misunderstanding. You're doing great. Take care. If you got a nice chunk of change for that house, did you put half aside for her, or did you keep it all? If you kept it all, you're the a-hole. You should have kept what you needed to support her until 18 and then given her a share. On the flip side, he could have created a trust for her where the house would have been hers, or put the house in both yours and Allison's name to protect her interest. I suppose the question is, if you received enough from rent, why did you sell it? And was the intent to give her the house or a portion of the house, or for you to leave her the house? Next story. I'm male 43 and my wife Greta, female 45, have 4 kids. Kara, female 18, Sean, male 6, and a set of twins, Charlotte and Austin 4. Charlotte and Austin have always been horrible sleepers. I won't go into all the things we've tried to get them sleeping well, but for now, I'm thrilled if they sleep in their beds at least 3 hours without coming into our room. Kara and the twins sleep down one end of the house, while Sean and my wife and I's bedroom is down the other end of the room. The only reason we didn't have the twins down on our end is that the room only fits one bed in it, and neither child wants to sleep on a top bunk. I tried it once. Charlotte woke up screaming, terrified in the middle of the night, and then Austin refused to even go near the bed. The room will not fit a double bed and the twins' dressers' toys in their room. For whatever reason, Kara has begun having night terrors and waking up screaming, which in turn wakes up the kids. I wanted to take her phone, but my wife said no. Instead, I threatened Kara that if she woke up the kids again, she'd be the one putting them in their beds and sitting with them until they were settled again, not us. Last night was the worst, and instead of screaming once, Kara was yelling out until I had raced all the way down the house and flew her door open, turning her light on. The twins were already crying in their room, so I made Kara get up, show them that she was fine, and told her to stay in their room until they were asleep, and went back to my own bed. This morning, Kara tried to sleep and was still trying to sneak back to bed and sleep at 11 a.m. And when my wife asked why she was so tired, I told her and told Kara that this will continue to happen every time she ruins the twins' sleep for no reason. She has no trauma, no reason to have nightmares, and has even told me that I know I'm dreaming, but I can't make myself wake up, but I can make myself scream to wake up. So that tells me it's intentional. My wife feels I'm the a-hole. But I think she's just too soft on Kara, and I'm doing this for her. I'm doing this because she deserves her sleep and not to be woken up because an adult cannot control herself, versus when our kids wake up due to nightmares, bedwetting, etc. So, am I the a-hole? Wow, you're the a-hole absolutely and without question. And your assertion that she has no trauma is baseless. At 18, I promise you she has a whole life of experiences that you know sweet F all about, and I'm sure some of them aren't good ones. You have a child with a sleep issue, and instead of having compassion about it and trying to seek treatment, you're just mad at being inconvenienced and make her go and settle the little ones. She's not having night terrors on purpose. Put your head on straight because right now, you're sucking at this parenting thing. You're the a-hole. Seriously, original poster? I hope this is a fake post because if not, I feel terrible for all your children. Do you think your daughter enjoys waking up terrified in the middle of the night and you're punishing her for something she cannot help when you should be comforting her? Teenagers need sleep, more sleep than adults. You need to let your daughter sleep when she can as a temporary fix and seek medical help for her as well. You're the a-hole. I'm 31 and I suffer from night terrors. Not every night, but I can get up screaming and jump straight out of bed and only wake after this, wondering why I'm out of bed screaming. It's not something you can control while you sleep. I've had therapy since I'm 18 and I'm on medication. It is still beyond my control.